Additional, and this is my final communication project on foundations of orality. This presentation focuses on a Bible study series that was conducted with a group of people whose information will be shared afterwards in this presentation, and also there were some information shared in this presentation that are from notable scholars from different fields whose work are relevant to this subject of discussion. The Bible study that was used as a background for this communication project was taken from Matthew chapter 26 verses 14 to 16. The text talks about Judas Iscariot when he went to meet the chief priests and asked them what they would give him so that he could deliver Jesus into their hands. They agreed on a certain amount, and afterwards he started looking for the opportunity to betray Jesus. So the Bible study was titled Bribed to Betray. The focus of the study is about keeping relationship and not betraying one another. Some lessons were derived from the text by the participants through inductive study, and everybody learned some lessons. The Bible study took place in Igbeti. Igbeti is one of the towns in Okeogun area of Oyo State, Nigeria, in West Africa. Igbeti is also called the Marble City because of the richness of marble in the land. Virtually all of the landmass in Igbeti has a deposit of marble in it. As at the census that was carried out in 2006, Igbeti has about 81,000 people, of which are 52% male and 48% females. Igbeti is surrounded with about 16 hills, of which one of them is part of the logo of the town. This is the logo of Igbeti, and this is the hill that was used as part of the logo. The name of this hill is Agbele, which literally could be interpreted as placing one thing above other. And if you look at the logo very well, you see that it looks like someone who is carrying a load over his or her head. There are several stories behind this hill. Whatever it is, this is a beautiful hill and is part of the identity of this town. The participant comprises of 3 males and 4 females, making a total of 7 people who participated in this study. According to Erik Erikson's stages of development, there was 1 middle year school participant, 3 teen year participants, 2 young adult year participants, and 1 middle age year participant. The Bible study is going to be the center of the presentation, as I have said earlier, and the audience will be analyzed based on the 14 characteristics of orality reliance, and the analysis will be discussed in the slides that follows till the end. The first of the 14 characteristics of orality as seen in the audience is artistic expression. The audience loves songs, especially communal songs. They love proverbs, they love storytelling, they love speaking and putting proverbs in between. Hardly would they make 2 or 3 statements without telling stories to back it up, and perhaps songs, and at the same time their dressing speaks something about them. In applying this to our communication project, one has to dress in a way that suits one's audience's culture. Dressing in contrary to this will make the speaker, the communicator, to look like a total stranger to them. Of course they may listen and give attention, but it will affect the way they receive the information that is being shared to them. And at the same time, while delivering the communication project, it has to be buttressed or illustrated through proverbs. All the statements of facts and truths should be introduced also in songs as one is making the delivery, so that it resonates well with them, since that is the artistic expression. The second characteristic is identity. The identity of the target audience shows in the way they respect social institutions. Their identity is not separated from their family values, their religion, their culture. The way they show respect for their fathers, the mother, the uncles, the sisters, and all of them is part of what identifies them for who they are. The religion they practice, how they practice their faith is also part of their identity. Their culture, which comprises of the language they speak, the way and manner of expression, the greetings, and all of these are part of their identities and which influence the way they relate with others. One or other important part of their identity is the way they consider other people's opinion before they make decisions, which makes them to live in a collective way. There is nothing like an individualistic approach to life, so they love to consider what others have to say about a particular thing before they take necessary steps. They consider the approval of either their father or mother or friends before they make life decisions. And so if we are to apply this to our communication project, family relation has to be emphasized in the stories that we share. One can share stories about how families relation are important because they share something of the same nature together. Another is the need for salvation. God sent Jesus to the whole world to save the world. However, the salvation of someone, or perhaps someone, can influence the salvation of others. The father can influence the salvation of his children or his wife, or the wife influencing the salvation of his children or the husband. So anyone can influence the salvation of the other, perhaps either by inviting the person to a church program or by being instrumental to their salvation by leading them to Christ. So their identity is another important part of the audience. Third characteristics of orality as seen in the audience is their attitude to innovation. They welcome innovations. They welcome something that is not common, either technology or tradition or something. However, they don't welcome what will make them jettison their tradition. So what they welcome, innovations they welcome, is something that will make them better, that will either be an improvement on their tradition, not necessarily that they have to jettison their tradition. And so before they make use of innovations, what they consider very well is that they prove it to be harmless, to be useful, and they can attest to the results, perhaps from someone who have used it before. So they welcome it very well, but they have conditions to what determines whether it will be approved and accepted by them. In applying this to our communication project, one has to be sure that the result of the new idea is valid, that what you are introducing to them, the new things you are showing to them, is something that has been tested and that has been proved to be working, so that when they have questions to ask about this new idea, you have something to tell to them. And that's the second application to communication project, that you should be ready to answer questions they may raise, because new things are not easily welcomed. People will have questions about new things that are introduced to them. They want to be sure that this is not another scam to them. The third application to our communication project is that it should present new innovations in a way that resonates with their interest. If it is something they are interested in, something that will be of use or value to them, they will quickly subscribe to it, as long as they can prove and attest that it's not going to be harmful and it's going to be beneficial to them. The fourth characteristic of orality as seen in the audience is the language they speak. In Igbeti, where the group of people with whom the Bible study was conducted were Yoruba speakers, and of course, because of the education influence, they can speak English as well. Meanwhile, in Igbeti in general, there are people who speak other languages due to migration from one place to another and business reasons. You have Hausa people who speak Hausa, you have Igbo people, and all of them. These people can read and write, and so the language they speak, they can read it and they can write it. Their language is a repository of their heritage. The language they speak identifies them with their heritage. They value it so much that they consider it an aberration to not speak it. Yoruba language is the language of expression almost everywhere, and they memorize things easily, they learn things easily using this art language which they speak. And if you are to apply this to our communication project, we see that the language of mastery to a certain level should be what we choose to speak. So anyone who is going to teach them has to learn and know how to speak in Yoruba to a certain extent, so that the audience can be captured and can be communicated to at various levels of their development. Also, where the communicator cannot speak the language in a fluent manner, the use of interpreters where necessary should be encouraged, so that communication is not hindered. Another thing is that to help them learn very well, you have to teach them either songs or some other things in their language, in the language they can memorize and understand. So language is a very powerful characteristic of this audience when it comes to communication and interaction with others. The fifth characteristic of orality as analyzed with the audience is their learning patterns. The audience learn through multiple learning patterns. There are some of them who are visual learners, some are auditory learners, some can read and write, and many of them are kinesthetic learners. So some of them can learn through either auditory means or through visual means. Some they are okay with books, some are kinesthetic learners, and so there are multiple learners. They have multiple learning patterns, and this makes it a bit easier. However, not all of them are okay with every learning patterns, so they have their preferred learning patterns, and of which storytelling, interactive learning, and modeling or observation has been observed as one of the important aspects of their learning patterns. They love to hear stories, and I've also seen even those who are educated amidst them love to read storybooks, hear stories rather than reading non-fiction books. They love fiction books. Even those who are learned are amidst them, the secondary oral learners amidst them. And the interactive way of learning is something that is very, very superb with them. They love to see things themselves, ask them questions from the Bible, let them find it out themselves and hear their opinions as well. And another way by which they learn is through modeling and observation. So somebody is doing something and another is watching and looking at them. For instance, at home, they don't give instruction to say go and cook this type of food. The mother cooks it, calls the children to stay with her while she's cooking, and with that they are observing and seeing how she does it, of which afterwards they also do it when they have mastered that over time. So almost various things that they do are what they do through modeling and observation. So these are the mode of learning and their preferred learning options. So in applying this to our communication project, we see that we need to avoid making them have to write many things, because many of them don't really like to write. I've observed that in Bible studies they don't like to write. They prefer that you tell them something and make them to memorize it, and it's okay by them. Another thing is that one have to incorporate storytelling in one's communications with them and make it interactive enough. They should not just be watching, listening while you speak. It bores them. They want you to engage them, ask them questions, let them hear their opinion, let them say what is in their mind, and whether they are right or wrong, they just want to hear their opinion about what you are discussing about. Another thing is that through the presentation, one has to use their language, their art language. They love it so well, and that's Yoruba language. So depends on the language your audience speaks well and that resonates with them. Another thing is that making use of gestures is important, as they use their body expressions in doing something. For instance, in the Bible study that we conducted, the language that we used throughout was Yoruba language. Everybody spoke. They mentioned their opinions when they were asked to look for some things in the Bible, and they answered by speaking their minds. Nobody was rubbished. Their opinions matters in the discussion, and at the end of the day, I asked them to do something which engaged their body system, their hands and their mouths and their eyes and all of that, like they did in the video that is being shown. So this is used in order to make them remember what the Bible study is all about, because one of the things is that there is no way they live perhaps in a day that they won't do one of these expressions, like in the case when they are washing their hands. So all of these are to be used so that their learning can be aided. The sixth characteristic is logic or reasoning. So their method of reasoning is non-linear logic. They don't like step by step. They just want to arrive at a point in time in their thoughts, in their approach to problems and all of that. So they love true life story or true to life examples during their life challenges. So when they are going through one difficulty, they want to hear someone who have gone through the same experience, or that you share a story of someone who have gone through their experience, such that it encourage them to hold on to God in their challenges and to assure them that there is going to be a solution. So to them, every idea is good, but they may not use everything, and this is why in their expression of their reasoning, of their logic, they consult other people until they find one that resonates with their interests. Not all of them have nothing in mind. When they are going through one life challenge, they already know what they want to do, but they want to be sure that they are thinking alright. So they consult different people, saying, what do you think one can do in this situation? So once you tell them this and it resonates with what they already had in their mind, what they do is that they are okay with it and they go by it, or they can consult as many people as possible. And another thing is that, so they think of different ways to do things and come up with new ways. So from the ideas you have shared with them, from the experiences you have shared with them, they tried something, and whatever works becomes the new approach to them. So individuals have different approach to matters and to problems. Whatever works for them is their next suggestion to someone else who may also be going through the same challenge. So how do we apply this to our communication project? Is that one has to assign a group project to carry out together. So since they love communal thinking, so one can give them projects that will involve a group of them to do, so that they can carry it out together. Another thing is that one have to guide or monitor them through the learning process. One problem with non-linear logic thinkers is that they are easily distracted. Many thoughts flows through their hearts and they want to try it out. So if you want them to stay focused in the learning exercise, you have to guide them and monitor them as you ask them to do one thing or the other. Another thing is that you allow for their differences, because they don't think the same way, they don't learn the same way. Now, as I saw through the Bible study that we had, is that before some statements were made, some were already trying to speak their minds, hearing their opinions, while some waited till the last statement of the study was made before they made their contributions and asked their questions. So all of these differences have to be tolerated while engaging them in communication. Seventh is the memory, and their memory, according to what Ahong expressed, is redundant in a way, and this is because they value repetition, symbols and gestures so much. the values repetition, symbols, and gestures so well. Every statement of facts has to be repeated to them, and that is what they remember. They don't want to hear everything you want to say, but the important ones that they hear, they want to hold on to it. So they expect that as you communicate with them, you repeat those statements over and over, perhaps in a different way. It may not be the same expression again and again, but you have to repeat your thoughts so that they can grab what you are saying. And another is through symbols. You can give them something as a symbol so that they can memorize and remember what you are communicating to them. Their gestures also have to be engaged in their learning. So through gestures, they learn facts and remember them quickly. And I think this is very, very common of them, because whatever they get engaged in stays with them. They learn when they engage. So how do we apply this to our project is by repeating some important statements of facts as one delivers the communication. As one carries out the communication with them, you ensure that you repeat some important statements that you want them to remember. Another thing is that you have to engage them to use their body as a gesture to remember things, like the one I just shared now, that they have to do something like, I have a relationship with Jesus. That's what they are simply saying in the video. I have a relationship with Jesus, I will not betray him. I have a relationship with Jesus, I will not betray him. I actually had a feedback about that somebody came to visit them in that house, and the person was actually not present when we had the Bible study. So the person was rubbing his hands as we did during our Bible study. So the mother of the house was asking the boy, were you in our Bible study? And he said, no, I was not there. So the boy was asked, how did he come about rubbing his hands? And he said it's just part of him. Then she began to share the story of our Bible study with her. So like that, using the gestures, she was able to communicate the story even to another person and teaching others. So they remember things very well when it's engaged their body. Another characteristic is the narrative. Their history is very, very important to them. Their history is very important to them, especially the older ones. Each time you have the younger ones around, they want to tell the story, they want to speak and hear them say something about the past. The adult as well, the older ones as well, always want to communicate the events of the past to the younger ones, and this makes them to be very narrative in nature. And another thing is that to every questions of why this, why that, why this, they cannot answer it in one statement. They want to share a story or to tell you the reason why, and in their bid to do that, they share stories, they give a narrative. So narration is something that is at home with them. So even if they are going to make contribution to discussions, they do it through narrative. So they do it narratively. They share it by narrating a story and drawing out lessons from it. So in applying this to our communication project, we tell Bible stories that answers the questions why in the gospel. Why did Jesus die? Then you have to take them through the stories that talks about the purpose of Jesus' death. So why do we have to ask God for forgiveness? Then you tell them stories why we have to ask God for forgiveness. Why do we need salvation? You take them through the stories and narratives of the Bible that talked about the need for salvation of the whole world, the need of Jesus by every individual in the whole world. So every questions of why that pertains the gospel has to be responded to by telling a story that resonates with that as repeated in the Bible. Another application is that if you tell the story of how Jesus chose his disciples and asked them to retell and share it. This is to tell us the history of how disciples are being made. Jesus chose them, he taught them the way of the kingdom. The Bible actually said he called them to be with him and that he might send them out. So we should tell the story of how Jesus chose his disciples and the need for them also to choose disciples, to make disciples for God, which is part of the Great Commission. So narrative is very, very important in communing with this. I have combined the 9th and the 10th characteristic of orality together, which are organization and processing. Now, in processing whatever information that is being communicated to this audience, this people group values relationship with the person who is communicating with them, perhaps the way they relate together. It talks about what they think about what, how they think about what, and forms the basis for their decision. Their opinion about the person who is communicating with them has something to do with how they think about what the person is sharing with them, and this will also influence whatever decisions they are going to make about what is being shared with them. So these people value relationship with others. Somebody who is closer to them can tell them something, they may not doubt it, but if someone who is not so close to them shares something with them, however important the thing may be, they will have a biased mind towards the person, and this will affect the way they think about what has been shared with them and their decision about whatever has been shared with them. So in applying this to our communication project amidst these people, one can share a story about their relationship with Jesus and emphasize the need to keep their relationship with Jesus, like the case of Judas Iscariot that was used in the Bible study. He had a relationship with Jesus, but he neglected the relationship and established another relationship with the chief priests, which jeopardized his relationship with Jesus. We knew how he ended his life. So we need to emphasize their need to keep their relationship with Jesus in such a way that nothing disrupts it and that they could keep connected with him. The 11th and 12th characteristic has also been joined together, which are respect and rituals. Now, there is something about respect with these people. It talks about their social relations with others. In this culture and amidst this people group of the audience, greeting is part of those things that identifies and resonates with them. An adult who is present amidst other people has to be greeted with so much respect that the female younger ones are expected to kneel down while they speak to the person, while the younger males are expected to prostrate in greeting the person. Another fact about their relationship is the fact that they cannot extend a handshake to the person who is older than them. It's an act of disrespectful. So they have to wait for the older person to either share a handshake with them before they could do something of such. Another way they express their respect in greeting or in expression and interaction is the fact that they add specific prefixes to how they greet people. For instance, in Yoruba culture, where the audience I studied with came from, one of the things they do is that when they are speaking with a singular person, the same way they will add prefix to more than one person, it's the same way they will respect an elder. So, like greeting an elderly person good morning in their language, it is naturally in English. English doesn't have this. So English we simply say karo. But when you are speaking to somebody who is older than you, their expression is e karo. They have to put the prefix e to it, which could also be used for multitude of people, more than one person. So in their social relation, in terms of greeting and interaction, respect is shown. And talking about ritual, with these people, there are certain rituals that they perform together. For instance, in Igbeti, where my audience resides, during Easter celebration, they usually go to one of the hills that surrounds the town. As a matter of fact, this is the biggest of the hills, which is said to be 30 feet tall and covers about 30 kilometers of the landmass. So everybody climbs this hill through a certain side of the hill that seems a bit slopey and seems easier to climb. So they gather together there, both Muslims and Christians and everyone in the community. So they see it as a means for tourism. So they gather together. It has become a ritual. The picture I share here is our adventure on that hill in the year 2019. Another is shared here, which was taken this year during the Easter celebration, and you can see the multitude of people who are climbing and some coming down from the hill. So this is one of the communal events that brings almost all of them together. And in applying this to our communication project, one of the things we have to do is that we have to respect our audience when you are speaking to them. You don't speak to them with disrespect. In your audience, since they value respect, they will expect that whoever is speaking to them, in your manner of expression, respect should be found. They don't trade it with anyone. And another thing is that you can tell a story about the danger of isolation, so that they can know that there is something good about relating together as a community. You remember Lot and Abraham. So Abraham and Lot separated, but they needed one another again. Lot needed Abraham, and this eventually happened. So you can tell a story of the danger in isolating oneself from other people. So respect and ritual is something very important to the people group. The 13th characteristic of orality here is time and space. There is something spectacular about Igbeti, where my Bible study group people lives. During the Harmattan season, Igbeti is usually very cold than every other places in the southwest Nigeria, and that is why Igbeti is also known as Ile Oye, that's Harmattan's house. And when you come to Igbeti around this time, you have to wear multiple clothes so that you are not affected by cold. Almost everyone wears a pullover or cardigan during this season, and so it has a lot to do with how they respond to invitation to learn something about the gospel or to stay where you can communicate with them. You cannot put some programs at some odd time when cold would have calmed down, like perhaps early in the morning or late in the night or in the midnight. You can't do that. Even though in Nigeria here, people do observe vigils. So, but during that period, if you are going to do that, you have to consider the season, the time in terms of season before you choose location and time for your program, for your communication program. Another thing is their priority in terms of time and space. I have observed that oftentimes when you have a fellowship and it falls on their market days, some of them, maybe a higher percentage of them, prefers to go to market to make their sales before they now come for fellowship, because their thought is that at least they have to bring money to church, so they need to go and do business first before they come. So in terms of priority, it also has a way of affecting the communication system, the communication of gospel with these people. So in applying this to our communication project, we have to choose a convenient time during a season, or based on the season that they are in. So if it is not during their Harmattan time, you can choose any time. People will come and there will be nothing. And at the same time, you have to choose time that is not on market days or on some seasons. Another thing that is important is that the population of people in that place, or virtually the youths in that place, don't reside there, because there is no institution, there's no university, no college in that place. So if you are holding a program or an event that will reach out to the youths, the teenagers and young adults who are of college age, who are above the secondary school age, you will have to choose a time when there is a season, a communal event that will bring all of them together, that will make them travel back home before they can be available. So you have to consider all of this before you choose a time for whatever programs you want to hold with them. And another application is that you have to teach stories that prioritize fellowship above belongings, like the story of the rich man whom Jesus says is not reached towards heaven. So that parable of the rich man who was foolish. So stories like that can be used in communicating the need to prioritize fellowship above belongings. And the last of the characteristics of orality is words. And about words, there is a way they understand words, especially words that are spoken about God's identity, God's person to them. In their language, there are various expressions in communicating who God is. They have ways of eulogizing God, like Ari Roala, Kabios, that's unquestionable God, and so many other ways by which they express their understanding of God, based on events, based on happenings, based on experience. And this also forms the way they express their belief in God, what they say about God, what they know about Him. So the way they use their words in expressing all of these are very, very vital. And so in applying this to our communication project, we should tell a story about encounters in the Bible. Virtually some of the names that God gave Himself or that people gave Him came out of some encounters and experience in the Bible, where God told the people He is the God that heals them, is the one who provides, and all of that came out of some encounters. So some of these encounters can be narrated in stories to these people, so that they can also see God through the phases of their experiences in life, whether challenges, whether good times, and all of that. And the second application of this characteristic to the people is by asking them to share a story of their encounter with God, maybe through one of their life experience, what does that experience teach them about God, and what can they say about God through the experience, and how can they express their belief in God through what they have experienced. So the words through their language communicate something about God, and words is part of the expression that resonates with the people. Thank you so much for listening.